All right. Well, we finally made it to the live program. I appreciate so much everybody who's been tuning in and waiting. Now, this is the third time I had to move it. But, you know, we do what we can. No, but my apologies to all those who've had to wait, who've tuned in. But we're finally here. Now, so, finally, we're going to do a review of the discussion that I had with Corey Minor from Smart Christian's channel on Once Saved, Always Saved. And, you know, I pretty much got out of the debate, or I think what came out of the debate was pretty much what I expected to come out of the debate. But I'll be interested in hearing your comments, seeing you in the side chat. I hit a cable there. Hope I didn't lose everybody. But, okay. So we're going to get into the content here in just a second. But, you know, with him basically conceding the point of Galatians chapter 5, verse 4, and then trying to walk it back at the same time. And then, of course, I'll have less to say about the John chapter 10. I'll have plenty to say, but less to say, perhaps. That's my plan anyway. So Corey Minor, you know, he seems like an okay guy personally. But here's the thing. I knew going into this discussion, it was going to be either he does all the talking, or it was going to be what it was, which is kind of a lot of talking over each other. And I don't think there was any other way to do it. And I'll tell you why. So, if you ever watch Corey Minor's material, Corey Minor likes to do most of the talking. I've seen him interview. I've seen him debate people, except for his formatted debates, which he doesn't do anymore. But I saw his discussions, and he pretty much does most of the talking. Now, Corey Minor does not like to listen. He's not an individual that likes to listen to what you say and contemplate it. That's not what he does. Ironically, he accuses other people, including me, of not wanting to listen, but I think he's the one that doesn't want to listen. And actually, when Corey Minor has done debates, like with Michael Brown, and he has, where you have a formatted speech pattern, so that he's got the same amount of time to talk as the other person, he's really at a disadvantage. He really doesn't do well. That he does better when he tries to override most of the conversation. What he does is he talks for a long time. He gives lectures. And he gives lectures, and then he gives a sermon, a lecture. And then what he does, he'll even start to reminisce down memory lane. And then when someone has him in a corner or something, he'll say, "Let me ask you a question." And he'll kind of shift the discussion a bit, which is what he did in the Galatians 5, chapter 5, verse 4 discussion too. And basically this debate did two things. It centered on his argument from John chapter 10, and it centered on the last portion of the debate on my passage. And I had several that I wanted to get to, and I didn't know how much time we would spend on any one thing. So, yeah, you know, Chris Scaff, Seeking the Once Saved. It was pretty much, yeah. So that's the point. Now, even when we started this discussion, in the beginning, after our two introductory speeches, he pretty much began to talk. Well, he said, "Let me just get into the conversation." Now, here's what happened. In the beginning, we were supposed to give up to 10 minutes of an introductory summary speech of our position so people understand where we're coming from. And I gave close to 10 minutes, and he didn't. I don't know what he did. I can't remember now, like 5 minutes or something like that. And he said, let's just go ahead and get into this. And so he went into discussion. He started to ask me a question, but then he went on, and he went on, and he went on, and he explained his view of what he thinks New Testament salvation is versus the Old Testament salvation. And he went on, and he went on. That's what he does. And I sat back for that first part, letting him do that. I thought, all right, do your thing now, because I'm not going to let you do this most of the time. And even then, my friends, I still let him talk quite a bit, even as I was trying to get him to answer my questions. Yeah, so I'm with you. Seeking the Once Saved says he wishes more passages were debated. So do I. And it's amazing. First of all, it's amazing how time will fly. It really is. And so I got plenty to say on this now. On this point here, let me pause. I do want to say to all you guys, I do appreciate you guys tuning in. So when I schedule a debate, or a live show for the week, I'm always kind of risking it, because you never know when I'm going to get off work. See, I don't get off work at a certain time. I get off when I get people's AC installed and running. And so you don't want to leave people, hot. So most of the time it's get it done in one day. And some, like today, you got a AC unit deep in the nether regions of the crawl space, and it's tight in there, and it's time absorbing. So I didn't make it to the 7 o'clock. Now before that, I was originally scheduled to go at 7 on Sunday, but wasn't feeling good at all. I get these tremendous sized headaches, and so I rescheduled it for Monday, and then I even sent out a message that we're going to do this Monday. But then, not very long after that, I decided to go ahead and do it Tuesday, because I had something I wanted to be doing on Monday. For some reason, YouTube didn't save it, so come Monday, 7 o'clock, Tax Savage sends me a message saying, hey, something wrong? What's the holdup? It's 10 minutes in. And immediately when he said that, I thought, I bet YouTube didn't change my scheduled time. And so we had that fiasco, and then I, of course, today worked overtime, so I appreciate you guys. Charles Jennings, good to see you in the side chat. Charles Jennings here. I got to say, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Now, Charles Jennings and I don't see eye to eye on many things, but I do appreciate his objectivity when it comes to the discussion with Corey Minor. I mean, he had several comments and opinions. Because I know, Charles here believes in once saved, always saved. But he was objective enough to give a fair and balanced opinion. So, Charles, I appreciate that. Now, back to what I was saying. And this is what it comes down to. Because I know some people were saying, AK's being arrogant. They said that same thing when I debated Matt Slick for the second time on Romans 9. Because I was going to be much more aggressive with him. Because I do believe, without being mean, without being a jerk, without being unkind and unchristian, you need to match the intensity of your opponent. And Matt Slick, yeah, well, that's pretty much what it was. And people were saying, this AK, he's so mean and arrogant. Although it wasn't anything different than what Matt Slick was doing, except without all the condensation, condescending tone and all that. But so, when it came to Corey Minor, it's really this simple. Either he was going to do all the talking, or it was going to have to be kind of this intense back and forth like it was. And I think he knew that, because when he advertised it, he said, come see an intense conversation. So, it really isn't me trying to be mean. I think most people can see when I debate somebody who's able to talk and then stop and then listen and exchange conversations, I can be pretty easygoing on those things. Now, yes, when it comes to cross-examination, if I ask a question, I'm going to push it. I'm going to press it. And I'm going to call you out if you don't answer. That's just the way it is. But I can be pretty calm and collected. But I knew you can't do that with Corey Minor, because he's going to try to dominate the conversation. And we saw that at the very beginning. That's exactly what he tried to do. And then once I started making my case, I wasn't going to let up. I said, you're not going to do this the whole time. So that's what that was about. And so, yeah, so very passive. Well, I'd like to know what you mean by passive. Yeah, if you mean it like at the beginning, I let him go on for a while. But also, I went into this debate with, and it is a debate. I mean, it wasn't a formal debate. It was a discussion, but we were debating the issue, no doubt. But here's what I went into it. I know for years Corey Minor has been making this challenge that he'll shut down his channel or hand it over if someone can refute his Greek argument. Now, I'm not going to try to kind of beat a dead horse here because I've spent last week putting out a lot of shorter videos on the Greek stuff and the scholars. But in the discussion, my objective was to attack that argument. And here's what people have to know, and people don't get this. Now, I know you guys in the side chat probably do, but a lot of people just simply do not. They don't know how debates and rebuttals and the burden of proof work. I got comments like, AK, you didn't do very good in the John 10 of proving that once saved, always saved is false. One guy said, but, in the Galatians 5, you did a little better. Yeah, there is a reason for that, because in Galatians chapter 5 is where I was actually trying to demonstrate my case. I was actually making an argument and attempting to prove it. When it comes to John chapter 10 and verse 28, I'm doing what is called a rebuttal. Okay, I'm not trying to prove once saved, always saved is false. And I wasn't even trying to prove that sheep can stop being sheep. It wasn't my attempt. Now, I made statements affirming what I believe, but I wasn't trying to prove it because I was answering his argument. What I was doing is primarily what is called a rebuttal. So I was not seeking to disprove once saved, always saved in the John chapter 10 discussion. I wasn't trying to establish that sheep can stop being sheep or will. I was just simply saying if sheep stop being sheep, it doesn't invalidate the Greek rule that Corey Minor was talking about. And that's what the whole thing was about. And then in the second portion, I went to my passage and I tried to grill him on it. And most people say that he didn't do very good there. So, but seeking the once saved says your argument is so nuanced, AK. Many are missing the John 10 nuances. Now, I get it. Now, anytime you're coming into a discussion where you're going to be saying a lot of things about Greek, I know a lot of people, it's not just a matter of them not understanding Greek. It's a matter of, well, I suppose that's a lot of what it is. They don't get what you're saying, and they're already, as soon as they hear you're going to talk about Greek, they're kind of turned off. And I get it. I mean, let's face it. I mean, most people don't understand Greek, anything about it. But now, so I'm interested. Now, I've kind of asked them already. Layman's Seminary, Charles Jennings. Now, Charles Jennings, like I said, disagrees with me on this issue, but seemed, at least he said, that he understood my Greek approach, what I was saying. Now, so, Charles, if you're interested at all in repeating some of those points about what I said. So, I don't want to beat a dead horse. One thing that I think is significant to point out, which I will do here in a little bit, and that's the article for mounts. You'll have to excuse my voice is very tired. I'm putting a lot of effort into speaking up. It's an exhausting day, crawling in and out of a crawl space about 1,000 times. Really makes you tired. And I was rushing to get in here. I mean, I didn't get home, but just a short amount of time. That's why I didn't even have time for the theme song. I even had suffice to say, I rushed in here, but we got it going nonetheless. Okay, Charles is at work, so that's understandable. Okay, but let's say this. I want to say this. It's not me that wants to spend a lot of time talking about what the scholars say. I did that because of Corey Minor and because of his audience. Now, Corey Minor has a YouTube audience of 174,000 subscribers. Now, that's, relatively speaking for YouTube, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. That's 173,000 more than I got. And I'm honored and appreciative of every single one that I got, but I'm saying it takes a lot to get that many. He hadn't been on very long. And so, but that's fine. I don't mind that. But what I'm saying is his reach And I thought, I really want to hammer this Greek thing. He's always saying, show me one scholar that disagrees. So a few weeks before the discussion, I thought, oh, so Jamie, you got a refrigerant handling permit, so you got the EPA license? Yeah, I got the universal. So now I wonder, Chris says also, how in the world do you not have more? I'm not sure what you're referring to. I might have missed something you said earlier. Okay, so now that's interesting. Now, Charles, you think Michael Brown, I can't really remember what he did. I don't think he had anything during the discussion with Corey Minor, so you think he failed. You think he failed at his argument or in being prepared? Automotive, okay. Yeah, so seeking the once saved, he says, my Hobby Lobby analogy made my point clear. Now, it's just, see, that's the thing. It's pretty simple. Now, Caldwell, I think is his name, Apologetics, whom I know nothing about. I looked on there a couple times. He went live and he did this whole program, and it was titled AK Thinks Jesus Sheep Are Like Hobby Lobby Employees. And okay, that's pretty pathetic, but that's okay, because you're not going to convince anybody that isn't already convinced with that kind of statement. No, what I was doing is I was comparing the logical inference that he was making with a similar structure of statement, like was found in John chapter 10, verse 28. Yeah, so he failed to address the Greek. Yeah. So, well, actually, I think Michael Brown is an expert in Hebrew. I don't think he knows much about Greek. So, I knew from the moment I heard Corey Minor years ago make the argument, I knew exactly what the problem was. Yeah. Caldwell, Rick Caldwell. Yeah, so, but, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I got it. Subscribers, Chris, I got it. Yeah, so, now let me get back into my train of thought. I went into the discussion, I wanted to hammer that. And I try to make it clear, but a lot of people don't get it. I try to make it clear. What I'm doing with John chapter 10, verse 20, is not trying to disprove once saved, always saved. And my emails to these scholars made it clear. I kept saying to them, granted, for the sake of discussion, that once saved, always saved, or perseverance of the saints is true. And I kept saying that because it was true. That's not what I was trying to do. And also, I knew some of these Greek scholars believed in it, and I was afraid they would be biased. I'm not saying everybody that believes in once saved, always saved is biased, but if you're writing to somebody you don't know who believes in a doctrine and you're trying to refute a common popular argument for it, the temptation to be biased, is very strong there, and so I try to be very careful with them. At first, here's the thing. At first, I was not going to try to find Greek scholars because I don't care. It's not that I don't care about scholarship. I like scholars. I listen to scholars. There's a lot of Calvinistic scholars out there that I really like to listen to on topics other than soteriology. I learned Greek from scholars. Daniel Wallace, Bill Mounts, several others. What's his name? David Allen Black. So I got no problem with scholarship. What I'm saying is, when I'm going into a discussion to prove a point, I don't like to put too much emphasis on scholars. So a few weeks out from the discussion, I thought I probably should find some scholars. But I didn't really want to. I didn't want to take the time to email a bunch of scholars and look them up. I guess I just didn't care personally, but I thought, well, this will be good. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, this is going to be really good if I do this. And so, let me tell you, I looked up a dozen scholars. That's what I did. And I suppose if I had started weeks before, or many weeks before I did, it would have been better. But when I finally realized, actually, this would probably be pretty significant if I do this, because he's been making this challenge and telling his audience for years, find me one Greek scholar. Now, I already knew that if I put forth this effort and I show him one, I mean, he's just going to dismiss it, and that's exactly what he did. So I did. I emailed like dozens of them, or a dozen, I should say. And I got just a few, I got a handful back. I just got one back a couple of days ago. So one guy said, I don't have time for this question. Okay. The one I just got back a few days ago says, I'm retired, no more Greek questions. He's probably exhausted with the Greek, I guess. I said, okay, so there's another one. The vast majority of these scholars do not respond to me, and I get it. I don't answer many emails that I get. I get it. I'm not mad at them. The first one that responded to me, actually was a guy named McKnight, and I can thank Joe, not our normal JP friend, but Joel Penn, I think is his name. I talked to him the other day, and he recommended that I ask one of these scholars, and I did. I asked Scott McKnight, and I laid out what I was asking, and he responded and said, sounds reasonable to me. Okay, but Scott McKnight, yeah, see? JP Uncut, yeah, that's his channel. But Scott McKnight saying, sounds reasonable to me. You know, Corey isn't going to accept that at all. Not that I thought he was going to accept any of them, but he could easily dismiss that. I mean, there wasn't much to grab a hold of. So, but I did bring it. I had it prepared. And then I got another one from a guy who said the same thing. Now, he was from Dallas Theological Seminary. Of course, he's going to believe in once saved, always saved, and I knew that asking him. And he agreed with me. He said, yeah, I agree with you. You can't. The Greek isn't going to get you there. And he said all this, and he says, so I get what you're going, and I agree with you. And so I asked him, and then a follow-up email came later where he was a little bit more vague, and I was saying, all right, let me make sure. Are you saying this? He said, yeah, and he emailed back, yeah, I agree with you. And then he said a little bit more that sounded like he was kind of wishy-washy, and then finally, I asked him again. He sent another email and changed his mind. So, what are you going to do? And then I got the responses that I did get. Now, here's the thing. In the discussion, I really have to start asking more questions before we go into these discussions. Now, the thing is, before the discussion, we were in the backstage. Corey and Marlon were having a lot of technical issues, and they were focused on that. So I didn't want to say too much. I did say that we need to give some speeches that introduce our thoughts. But my assumption was, since it was just a free-flowing discussion, that we were going to go for like 2 hours. And then I was kind of holding off a bit on my scholars. I wanted to wait till the right moment. But then Marlon started saying, hey, we're about to hit the top of the hour, and that started throwing me off. It's like, well, so what? I mean, we're going to go for like 2 hours. And he started talking like we're going to reconsider things at the top of the hour or an hour mark, and I was thinking, well, I don't remember agreeing that we were just going to talk for an hour. So I started hurrying through my scholars. I didn't read most of my emails to them. And that was really significant. And that really cost me, because it allowed Corey Minor to do this thing with the first scholar that I gave him. To say, oh, he agrees with me. He just said, and also he said that ume by itself doesn't prove anything. I've never said ume by itself. I said in the discussion, though, I said, if you listen to my email to him, we're not talking about, and this is important, Joe Kritko, yeah, I remember somebody saying about Joe, and I looked at him, but no, I haven't got around to him yet. See, what's his belief on once saved, always saved? Now, I'm not saying he has to, disbelieve it. I'm just saying, when they do believe it, you do run the risk of getting somebody biased, and they're going to, I'm not saying he is. Now, again, I did email several people who do believe in once saved, always saved, but I always try to be very clear in my email. I'm not trying to disprove your theology. The Unapologetic Jew, appreciate you coming on there again. I've appreciated some of the back and forth we've had. But John 6:44. Soongenis. Oh, Soongenis. All right. Going after Soongenis. Okay, so Corey made a big deal about, and he even did this in his follow-up video, where he was talking about ume by itself. When did I ever say ume by itself? Now, that's the double negation, or the emphatic negation. Okay, nobody was ever talking about just the two words standing alone in an empty space out by Mars or something, okay? Nobody was ever talking, when the scholars said ume by itself, this didn't mean like the two words in a vacuum on a blank sheet of paper with no words surrounding them. He was responding to what I said, that in the clause, my sheep shall never perish, of course, sheep is implied by the word they. I made it clear in my email that the argument is to say the sheep will never perish, ume, emphatic negation, does not tell you whether the sheep could stop being sheep. It only tells you that the sheep will never perish. So does the Greek emphatic negation in this statement necessitate that the sheep will always be the sheep? That's what he was responding to, this scholar. So when the scholar said, and who was it? Let's see. I will bring something on the screen here in just a moment. It was, what did I do with that one? Scott McKnight. I think it was Birding. Watson. It was the first one, I believe, Birding. Yeah, it was Birding. When he says, no, ume by itself does not do the work, Corey thinks that it's like the two words floating in a nebulous. No, he means in the statement, my sheep shall never perish, cannot establish what I asked him about, which is that the sheep will never stop being sheep. That can't be necessitated by the statement. That's what he was implying. See, but I didn't have time, or I didn't take the time to go through my email because Marlon's saying, hey, we're almost at the 1 hour mark. And I didn't know what that meant. But yeah, it's contextual. That's exactly right. I mean, if someone wants to make the argument that, well, in the larger context of John chapter 10, it demonstrates that sheep will never stop following. Now, I disagree, but I was never arguing. Now, Charles gets this. I was never discussing or disagreeing about the context. I was disagreeing and refuting the idea that the emphatic negation in the B clause of John chapter 10, verse 28, established the inference that Corey was making. There's the Greek rule, and then there's the inference that's drawn from it. And yes, Hobby Lobby analogy works just fine if you understand it. So, yeah, I get it. Well, Marlon's trying to moderate. Now, Marlon did say, this isn't about Corey shutting down his channel, but I think that it is. It is because the confidence that Corey Minor has asserted about his once saved, always saved argument from the emphatic negation is significant. He's been telling his audience that he's been resting his case on that. And he's been making this challenge. I'm so confident. And this is so ironclad that I'll shut my channel down. That's why it was important. It's not like I was ever going to take his channel over. I didn't ever expect that he would give it to me. If Corey would just stop saying what he's saying and start preaching that you can lose your salvation if you don't abide in Christ, something like that, fine. I don't have to take over his channel. Okay, but the most important thing was the mounts thing. Now, let's see if I got that. I don't think so, but I have it here. I don't want to go through it again. Go back and look at the video that I did that's titled Bill Mounts versus Corey Minor. Now, Bill Mounts Nobody's going to disagree that he's a scholar. You can't, he wrote the book, literally. So you can't dismiss him. And what Yeah. Okay, so I think I have this here somewhere. Bill Mounts, I'm going to pull him up. But go ahead and look at that video. Because Bill Mounts, and that I had him ready, by the way. I just didn't get to him. And I only came across Bill Mounts' article shortly before the discussion, like that day. A second reading later, it dawned on me this was the best one to go to. Because he's making the same case that I'm making, just in a different passage. But Bill Mounts says that in Mark chapter 10, verse 15, when he says, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter. And he says, but it really means is that as long as the person does not become like a child, he will not enter. Meaning, well, if he stops behaving that way, he will then enter. So, yes, the ume here doesn't imply that the category of people named will always be in that category. He even uses the words, as long as the person does not become like a child. And I said the same thing in one of my emails. It was actually to Professor Watson. I said, using John chapter 10, verse 28, actually I was using my Hobby Lobby example, and I said, in other words, the policy of Hobby Lobby is stating that while one, or as long as one is an employee of Hobby Lobby, he will never work Sunday. That's the same thing Bill Mounts is saying. I think the color is off on my camera. I was messing with it earlier. You know, I can't ever really tell color. I'm colorblind, very much so. So I can never really tell what color I've made myself, but, you know, something's off. Okay. Well, now, but I beat this dead horse, although the horse does have some twitching. So we've continued to thrust blows upon him. But let's move on. I didn't have the time. I was going to do this earlier today, but since I got in late, I didn't have the time to select portions of this. Here's what I was getting at when I kept demanding an answer to the question. What I was wanting to know from Corey was, is there anybody that was saved and has been saved that is seeking to be justified by the law? Because once he answers yes, he's given up the discussion. But it's quite obvious because Paul says that they were seeking to be justified and that they were saved in chapter 4. Okay, one issue with the Hobby Lobby. Go ahead. Give it to me. Okay. So let's listen to this. This is about the time that I'm going to go to chapter 4 and show Paul says that these same people who are doing the same thing he says in verse 4 of chapter 5 were saved people.
So you're acting like I'm just drawing words up out of thin air.
I'm asking you, does whoever include the saved? There's the question.
Does it include the saved? Whoever is, as he says in the text, he says, whoever it is that is trying to be justified by the law. Whoever that may be.
Person?
If the person thinks there's, let me say it again. Whoever it is that is trying to be justified by the law. Follow my bound. It's not a ball, but my finger. Whoever it is that's trying to be saved by the law. You have, according to the text, past tense, been cut off.
My question is not, are they cut off?
My answer is
to be justified by the law. No, you didn't.
My answer
I asked, have they ever been saved, or are there saved people? Now, he knows what I wanted to know. Now, in all the back and forth, the emphasis of my question shifted, and I really should have kept it on the original. What I was really wanting to know is, have they been saved? But I was so much trying to press him that I just started asking, are there saved people? But really what I wanted to know, and I repeated it there, and I said it several times, have they been saved? So when I'm asking, are there saved people, I'm really saying, are there people in the church who at one point are saved and then seek to be justified by the law? And the reason I wanted him to answer, because if he says, whether he says no or yes, YouTube sending me a message. I'm not getting enough. All right. 1 second. Let me let this play. Because if he says no, I'm going to go to chapter 4 and show, well, no, Paul says they were saved. If he says yes, he's lost the debate, which he did at some point. Seeking to be justified.
When I just said no, never, and you keep coming back, you're not answering my question.
Answer. There's the answer. No saved person.
Oh, so now do this question. Now, AK, do me a favor. Ask the chat, did I answer that way? Did I ever say no or never? Ask the chat, did I ever say that? I
just
said
heard you.
that.
I mean, you haven't been answering my question. I asked you if they were saved, if they could be saved. Are there saved people who are seeking to be justified by the law?
Chat.
No, you would never.
Fine. Make your point,
Corey,
but I'll
I can't
ask
see
the
the chat. I mean, I don't have the chat up on the screen.
Okay, well, when you finish,
hey guys,
you go back and ask the chat.
Guys,
I made that point.
I'm gonna let you guys go about 10 more minutes, and then we're gonna go to Q&A, guys.
Okay.
Well, so I'm going to take it as you say, no, they never have been saved. No saved person could seek to be justified by the law. Would that be a fair representation? No, don't. Okay, come on, please. Come on, friend. I mean, listen, just answer the question. I'm just saying now, is it a fair representation that no saved person?
I said no.
Okay, so no. All right, so in chapter 4, you have him. Now, first of all, he tried really hard to never say no, saying, thank you. There's an answer. In chapter 4, verse 8, he says, however, at that time when you did not know God, you were slaves to those things to which by nature are no gods. But now having been known of God, or rather having been known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things?
What verse?
To which you want. In verse 9, it says, to which you want to be enslaved all over again. Now, this text says that saved people want to be enslaved all over again. What are they wanting to be enslaved to?
I'm sorry.
While you're thinking, I'll read it here. It says, verse 9, but now having known God, or rather having been known by God, which would be salvation language, I don't think that you would disagree. How is it that you, the people that have been known by God, those that are saved, turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you want? There is a seeking, there is a desire to be enslaved all over again, and the context is about the law. In chapter 5, verse 1, he says it again. Do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. So they do. Here are saved people who do seek to be justified by the law.
No. This is why I with all due respect, AK, you're not dealing with this in good faith. I said there are different people there in the crowd, in this audience. You've got those that are truly saved who are confused.
Now, this is something he says all the time. I want everybody to realize what he's doing. I just took him to a passage that shows that Paul's talking to saved people who are doing the very thing that in chapter 5, verse 4, he says will cost them salvation. Corey always wants to say, well, in any audience, you're going to have some unsaved people. Never the issue. If you go to his videos where he's talking about the purpose of the warning passages in Scripture, he'll say, well, in any audience, in any church, you're going to have unsaved people in there. But that's not the issue. The issue is not, can you have unsaved people, or may there be unsaved people in your audience? The issue is the statements about falling away from grace, statements in the warnings, who are they addressed to? And if I can establish from context that they're addressed to the saved, that's what matters. That means he's warning the saved not to fall away. So in Galatians 5, actually in 4. I read your comment there, Charles Jennings. I'm not sure I understood it. Of course, I'm trying to read it quickly. YouTube keeps telling me I don't have enough. I don't know what else it wants. I just pumped it up to 6,000. I'm not tech savvy. I'm telling you guys, I just simply am not. I have it. My bit rate is 6,000. It's still telling me. It's usually on 4,000. Anyway. It says that viewers will experience buffering. Are you guys experiencing any buffering? Yeah, I don't know why it wants so many. Hold on. When I played the video, okay, that's probably the issue. Okay, in chapter 4, if you go to chapter 5, this is the point I was making, and which he failed at addressing. Yeah, my computer's slow right now. In verse 1, Paul says, it was for freedom that Christ set us free. He's including himself. Well, this freedom, these are the saved. He wouldn't say that to unsaved individuals. He says, therefore stand firm and do not be subject again, note the word again, to a yoke of slavery. Again, not that you're still in slavery, it's do not be subject again. So it is quite obvious that Paul is addressing saved individuals, and the warnings that are about to flow are being made to the saved. That's how you do exegesis. You follow the train of thought. So, who's he talking to in verse 1? The saved. And what is he telling them? Stand firm, do not be subject again. Now, wait a minute. But in the warning in verse 4 about being severed from Christ, I mean, it's not a warning per se, it's just a statement that they have been severed from Christ, that they have fallen from grace. This supposedly is being made to unbelievers, according to Corey, because you couldn't say that about the saved. But he's talking to the saved, telling them, do not do this thing that in verse 4 will result in this. But notice it's a yoke of, notice the word slavery and again. Now, as pagans, in chapter 4, he talked about how they were in bondage to the fundamental, elemental things of the world. This has to do with their paganism. Now, if they're going to be subject to the law of Moses, it's going to be another form of slavery. Now, in Galatians 4, he says, in verse 9, he says, but now, having known God, or rather having been known by God, now that's salvation language. How is it that you turn your back? How is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you want to be enslaved? There's our bondage. All over again. Notice the word again. So he's saying you are saved, but you're wanting to return a second time to slavery, a second time to bondage. This is what you are seeking to do, to which you want, you desire to be enslaved all over again. And then as he proceeds in chapter 5, we get to that verse that I read earlier. He says, keep standing, do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. Well, he's talking to the saved, and it's the saved that are seeking to go back to the law. And when he says in Galatians chapter 2, he says, behold, I, Paul, say to you that if you receive circumcision, who's he been talking to? The saved. Christ will be no benefit to you. Well, salvation and justification is quite a big of a benefit. And again, I testify to every man who receives circumcision that he is under obligation to keep the whole law. You have been severed from Christ, you who are being justified by law. You have fallen from grace. It's quite obvious who he's talking to. He's talking to the same people that he said were saved earlier. They wanted to go back to this bondage, and he's saying, if that's what you're wanting to do, then you're severed from Christ. In other words, you're severed from the justification you get that comes by grace. That's why he says fallen from grace. But Corey, he disagreed. And at some point here, he just all of a sudden shifts away from the discussion. Now, I went to chapter, you just heard it in that video. I went to chapter 4, and I showed you what I showed you guys just a second ago, how Paul is speaking to saved people, that he undeniably, and even Corey agreed that they were saved. And Paul says, you are seeking to return to bondage again. And so these saved people are seeking to do the thing that Corey says in chapter 5, verse 4, only the unsaved would be doing. But he says, I've already told you that there's unsaved people in every audience. Well, that doesn't address my point. I just showed Corey from chapter 4 how he's not addressing the unsaved audience. See, it's not a matter of if there are unsaved people in your audience. It's a matter of whom you're talking to. Anyway. But I want you guys to take a look at the smaller videos that I've been doing on Corey. I especially the mounts one. Anyway. Seeking the once saved says, AK, would you be open to the idea that God is keeping his elect, but if we turn away, we aren't his elect? Now, yeah, so what you're saying, so this is perseverance of the saints. In other words, if you fall away, then you never were saved. I mean, is that what you're asking? Yeah, so anyway, if that's what you're asking. So seeking the once saved says, I'm saying a genuine believer would, I think he means not fall away because he's not elect. Yeah, that's perseverance of the saints. I don't know if you're familiar with that idea. Let me do something here. Sometimes this doesn't work. So I try to put the comment, if I'm going to talk to you guys for a while, I try to put the comments here, but a lot of times it stops and disconnects the chat. And I won't see your guys' comments anymore. We'll try it anyway. All right. Well, so if you're talking about it's the perseverance of the saints idea that the truly saved will not fall away versus a different type of once saved, always saved, like those who believe in free grace would take, that you could actually fall away in the sense you could go back to sin, you could die in sin, you can even become an atheist, and you would still be saved. Yeah, well, Corey Minor would hold more to the perseverance of the saints. The idea that, well, the truly saved would never go back to a life of sin. All right, so here's the thing. I said this in the opening of, I don't know much longer I could hold up with my voice here, but I said this in the beginning of my speech. I have more respect for this perseverance of the saints idea than I do for the free grace type, Charles Stanley type, where you could fall away, you could live in rebellion, you could even die in rebellion and still be saved. See, the Calvinists understand, no, you can't do that. You can't be in rebellion and be saved. So they say, well, if you do, you just never were saved. Okay, so I'm afraid, see, I'm thinking the chat got disconnected because I don't see any more comments. And that happens. I don't know why. It's because I remove it so that I could just have your comments on the screen, but then it doesn't play anymore. So let's see. Yeah, see, yeah, there it is, more comments. For using Mac, no, see, I've used Windows most of my life, Jamie. Now, using a Mac, I'll never go back. That's my policy. Once you go Mac, you never go back. This thing is getting old, and I got a lot of stuff on it, and it's starting to slow down, but leaps and bounds from Windows. Okay. So seeking once saved, you're saying, he says, no, I'm saying a genuine believer can fall away, but only if they aren't elect. Okay, I get what you're saying. I'm saying there are genuine believers that aren't elect, not perseverance. Okay, I get you. No, because in the Bible, the elect are simply those. For example, in Paul's literature, the elect are the Christians. They are the saved. So I don't know anywhere in Scripture where the words elect would distinguish, when you're talking about Christians, saved Christians from, or it would distinguish from saved Christians who could fall away and other types of saved Christians. I just don't see anywhere in the Bible where that kind of difference would be justified. Sparuski lady, you're late. Hey, I was late. So I was even late myself because I came in at 8. Isn't elect just another term for God's people like saint children? Yeah, well, in some contexts, sometimes it's not. You know, in Jacob and Esau, when it talks about God's election, it wasn't talking about the election of their salvation. Sometimes it's talking about other things. But yes, when we're talking about Christians, the chosen are just simply those chosen in Christ. Yeah, so it would just mean that. Joey Chapa. Now, Joey, I've asked this before, and I think I know. I asked you before if you were the same person as Dan, and I think you said yes, but I just have to ask, are you Dan Chapa? Chapa? We're going to be disappointed, Sparuski lady. Okay, so Joey says no. Okay. I wasn't sure. Are you related to Dan Chapa? Sparuski, you're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to go too far because no relation. Okay. My apologies. My voice is giving out, really. And I've been exhausted from work. Jamie says, he told me no relation, and then he says no relation. Okay, so, yeah, okay, now I got that straight. I'd go another hour if I was feeling up to it, if I had more time before I got home, you know. John 15, I think, is a good case. I was prepared to go to that text. I was debating in my mind, but I went to Galatians 5. I was debating in my mind and going to James chapter 5, verse 19, Hebrews 10, and I almost went to Hebrews 10. Hebrews 10, knocks it out of the water. Romans 11 or John 15. And I'm fine with Galatians 5. It's just time ran out. And then Corey Minor shifted it at some point. Yeah, you hit the replay. Sometimes I do these live programs, and I walk away going, that wasn't very good. That wasn't very substance. I didn't do a good job speaking. I fumbled and bumbled too much because I talk fast sometimes, and it makes me stutter. Or like this. I feel like I was too rushed. My voice is not very strong. I put a lot of effort into it, but and then I sometimes I delete it. I say delete. My email is akrichardson, one word, at zoho.com, Z as in zebra, ZOHO.com, zoho.com. Charles, I guess everybody does. You know, every debate I do, I look back and I said, I wish I would have said that. Just like this one. If I had slowed down reading Mounts' article, I thought that was the best one to do. Now, I'm satisfied with my other scholars. He was going to dismiss them no matter what. But Mounts really hit the point home. Sometimes I misspeak, and I look back and I say, no, that's not what I meant to say, and people are going to be confused, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, I'll take some last questions or comments on the debate or whatever, really, before I close it down. And then I know I haven't been doing too many live programs. In the weeks leading up to the debate, I just wanted to think about that topic and Corey Minor. I did some shorter ones, put out some shorter videos. And that's another reason I didn't do any live ones, because I spent some time doing some live some shorter pre-recorded videos. Sparuski lady says you let him tangle you up with his steamrolling. I don't know what steamrolling is. I don't know what you mean. Charles says Corey attends Dallas Theological Seminary, so he will have to get the big guns involved. I emailed several people from Dallas, and I did get a response from one of them. That was the guy that kind of flip-flopped. I emailed several people from Dallas Theological Seminary because they had all their information right there for me to get. I knew since they're dispensational, they're always going to be once saved, always saved. Michael Boer? No, not him. I don't even remember his name now. So you're talking about Corey? The way he talks fast and lots of words and rolls over the top of you. Well, I didn't think so. I think that I kept up with him pretty well. I mean, I don't remember him ever talking over me. I knew most of the time I caught nearly everything he said. I mean, I'm not bothered by your opinion. It's fine with me. Because I guarantee I can talk a lot faster than he can. I really try to pace myself in slowing down. And I don't go very slow at that. Well, so Joey, here's the thing. I'm an independent thinker. My views sometimes, when it comes to the churches of Christ, my views don't always line up, and sometimes they do. And sometimes they like me, sometimes they don't. because I just think like me. I mean, I just a Christian. That's my thought. But I say the Churches of Christ are some smart cookies. I agree with them on probably more than not. Okay. Well, I hate to cut it shorter than normal, but my voice is pretty tired. Chris says the examples in the Scripture clearly show that the emphatic negation in the subjunctive does not necessitate. Absolutely. And Mounts showed that in the article I read from him. Chris, I don't know if you saw it. But sure they do. Saying my sheep will never perish, that statement with the emphatic negation says nothing except for what it says, which is that the sheep will never perish. It doesn't say that there will always be sheep. Yeah, okay. So, all right. All right, so. All right, I'm going to call it a night. I really appreciate you guys. And like and subscribe if you haven't. Spread the word around. I do appreciate you guys. I think you guys have been doing that. It must be because my subscriber count is really going a lot faster than it ever has before. I mean, I reached 1,000 not too long ago, and I'm already over 1,100. So I appreciate you guys, helping the program out. Can you have a condition with an emphatic negation? If you're talking about grammatically, yeah, you can. And by the way, people kept saying, one thing I did say incorrectly, because this goes both ways. Now, in that statement about, I forget even what verse it was, but Corey asked, is that not a condition when it says whoever something? Hassan. And I said, no, it means whoever. Well, but it is an implied condition. See, grammatically, it's not what we call a formal condition. It means it doesn't have the if-then markers. That's what you call a formal condition. But it doesn't have to have the formal condition to imply a condition. If Jesus says, or if Paul says, what's the verse I'm thinking about? There is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Well, that's an implied condition because the condition is if you are in Christ Jesus, there is no condition. There is no condemnation, I mean. So, now to word it like that makes it a formal condition. But the way it's worded in the actual chapter of Romans, it's just a implied condition, so yeah. Now, when you say whoever believes in me will never perish. Okay, that's not formally a condition. It doesn't have the if-then. But it implies a condition. To say whoever believes in me will never perish implies if you believe in me, you will never perish. That's how that works. Well, that's right. Only myself says, the truth speaks clearly. God is not an author of confusion that requires any special knowledge of grammar and languages. Yes, now, I want you to know, I do not believe you have to know Greek to be a Christian. Most people who are Christians do not know Greek, and that's okay. But I do believe they're helpful as teachers and evangelists in the church. And listen, it's my knowledge of Greek that helps me approach Corey Minor, making the fallacious arguments that he makes. So, but I'm with you. The only reason I brought the scholars, now actually I was going to say this earlier, and I forgot. I brought the scholars for his sake, but actually more so for his audience's sake. Now, it's not that I enjoy going and finding a scholar, Because, see, there's a risk. Because any one of those scholars can come back and say, you know what, I changed my mind, or he could act like he didn't say what he said. You could always have that risk. So, all right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you. Good night and God bless.